Hello and welcome to Whistler, British Columbia, host of the 2010 Olympic Games and the third stop on the 2019-2020 Viessmann Luge World Cup Tour. Women's singles is our first race this weekend, which also serves as a dress rehearsal for the 50th Luge World Championships to be held here next season. Weather conditions are not ideal, hovering just above freezing. Snow level line is right above the track, so hopefully we can hold out, have a clean first heat here without snow until that's scheduled to start a bit later. I'm your host, Bree Schaff, pleased to be joined by Canadian silver medalist Tristan Walker. Tristan, talk us down your home track and through the POV that we'll see later that you filmed for us.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Bree. Very excited to be here. So we're watching from the men's start here. Whistler is the fastest track in the world. There have been measures made in the past couple of years, especially since 2010, to kind of rein in that speed a little bit. But even with lowering the start heights and kind of declawing some of the more tricky parts at the bottom of the track, there has been, it's still the fastest track in the world, even with those measures. So here we go. This is into curve 9. This is me on a double sled going off the current men's start, by the way. So this is going to be a little bit quicker than what we're seeing from the women today. This is down into 13, the key section of the track, what's known as 50-50 for bobsleds, because only about 50% of them make it through. Here we go, maximum G-force is here through 16, and pulling uphill and across the finish line.
One key factor there is the finish line is a bit farther on the Whistler track, so you'll see the athletes stay tucked until they cross that line. First up today, we've got Hannah Prock from Austria. Our start order is reversed, slowest to fastest from the Nations Cup race yesterday. Then on into our seeded group. That is going to start with Brooke Apschram from Canada. We've got a lot of Canadians, new, fresh Canadians here in this race today. Tristan, this is a great place to start on a home track. Absolutely,
yeah. Some really breakout performances from some of the younger girls. It's great to see some fresh faces coming up, and really great to have Brooke Apschram back on the team. She had a bit of an accident in training, and that's why we have been missing her for the first couple of races this season. But
what track was that
on? That was actually dryland. It was
no.
before we even got to the ice. Yeah,
oh,
so
no.
a bit of a dryland injury. Unfortunate timing for getting on the ice, but she seems to be back and stronger than ever. So looks like she's in a real good place.
First sled off the top. Young athlete from Austria, Hannah Prock.
And right off the bat, we're going to see the start here, and with the shorter track number, shorter track length right now from going lower down the track, two things that are really going to be important in this race are the start, getting you through this flat, slow section of the track quicker than anyone else, and also set up with the conditions today.
Tristan, where does this track rank on starters tracks in the field? Would you call this the premier starters track now that the start has been lowered?
It's really close to the top. Obviously, the shorter the track, the shorter the track, the more effect a strong start will have on your. Whoa. Little late into 15 there, and that could very well be that setup that we're talking about. I don't know if you noticed right at the beginning of the race, the ice is actually just above freezing, which means it's really soft. So setup-wise, people are going to be looking to go more round and flat with their steels, so they're going to be kind of on top of the ice rather than sinking into it. And you never know where sometimes you think you're going to be set up safe enough, and it's this clearly. Obviously, with the sled going sideways there, that's not quite enough grip.
Tough first run for the young Austrian. Clearly, her setup did not pay off. But that frustration, she'll have a chance on the second heat to clean that up a bit. It's interesting, Tristan, we were just saying before the race started that these races in Whistler tend to be a bit less exciting because everything is a bit more streamlined. But right off the bat here, we're seeing the ice conditions are messing with people.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. We were talking about how you're likely not going to see too much variation with big breakout sideways skids hitting the walls like that. But that was proven wrong right off the bat. So let's see how Poland does.
On the handles, Klaudia Domaracka from Poland. Another young athlete, Klaudia finished 19th in Innsbruck and 25th in Lake Placid 2 weeks ago.
So this top section here, built to be the middle section of the track from the old start height. So it's quite slow and flat. You don't pick up much speed until out of exit 11 here. We can see there's lots of elevation drop. So
when was that start ramp built? Because that's been a game changer for entering corner 7 there, correct?
Yeah, we used the junior start was entrance 6, and it had a really abrupt cut from the start ramp into the.
Oh!
And that's going to cost you definitely coming uphill there. You see the finish line is quite a ways out of 16. They had to extend that to stay within international rules for length of track when they lowered the start height. So
Claudia is your new leader here with a 39.228 is the new time to beat. But as Tristan mentioned, going uphill is not the place where you have room to skid with such a long uphill finish straight.
Yeah, this exit of 16 is usually where people have problems on this track. It's one of the few places now. It's like we said with that POV video there, the 16 has the highest G-forces on the track, so that can be a little difficult to navigate, and you really want to be on the ball there, or else the track will do whatever it wants with you.
That ice spray is a great visual of time just spraying away as we head back to the top for Slovakia's Katarina Simonakova.
One thing to look out for is the number of paddles that the athletes are doing. She only did 3. That's going to be a lot to do with your athletic conditioning over the summer. There is a fine line on the start where a fourth paddle, if you are not fast enough or strong enough to keep the sled going, that fourth paddle will actually slow the sled down. So that's going to be something that you're looking at in training.
Yeah, kills your velocity there. Do you think it also has something to do with your comfort level on a track?
Absolutely. Oh, a little early to 12 there.
Ooh.
She seems to be recovering, like you said, that lower section of the track there that used to be really unforgiving. They've widened it up, and those lines 5-6 years ago would have been a crash for sure.
Beautiful line out of the finish curve 16, but not enough. She is 12 hundredths back of your leader, Claudia Demratskova.
One thing you saw there, really nice position coming out of 16. Obviously, that's one of the places going uphill that you're going to want to be in that aerodynamic position. And like most things in luge, it is a trade-off between safety and speed.
Right. If you can't see an athlete's face, that shows confidence, but of course easier to be confident out of a finish corner.
Yeah, right here, there used to be a big buildup of concrete, and they scraped that out. And that bump onto curve 13 would have put her on the ice pretty quickly back before they changed that.
Now, Tristan, that changed throughout the week, or is that something that they abruptly changed for race day today?
No, that's a change that they made to the track quite a while ago to make it easier to navigate in the bottom. And that's something that was done with the concrete, actually, not just the ice.
Back to the top on the handles, Latvia's Ula Zerna.
There you go, 4 paddles, so obviously she's a little more. Oh, and that is not what you want. Especially on this track, you can see how slow it is up here, how flat it is. There's hardly any vertical drop, and that is just going to cost you. Now you got, it's really hard to get back into a mental place to be able to drive the sled, because right now she knows her race is over.
And Ula is a very experienced athlete. She's been sliding for 16 years with a rich sliding history in Latvia. One thing I do appreciate is the Latvians bringing the volume at the start there. You don't often hear that in luge.
They are the most vocal. That is much more of a bobsled style motivation technique at the top. A little touch down the feet there, but that's not really going to have a big impact compared to that problem at the start.
Tough to come back from for Zerna, who is now nearly a half a second behind the pace due to that bobble at the start. Now that's probably an instance where weight would have helped. Do you find that in luge, where at least a heavier athlete has an easier time recovering from a hit at the start?
The hit at the start is really tough to recover from. Pretty much across the board. That just kills all the speed you have. And we were talking about that fine line between that third and fourth paddle, whether you're fast enough and strong enough to commit to that paddle, or if it's going to unsettle the sled. And in this case, it looked like that fourth paddle kind of unsettled the sled, and little bit of a crooked settle into the sled, and that's it.
Fourth paddle did not pay off for Zerna as we go back to the top for Veronica Ravena of Argentina.
Okay.
Veronica actually grew up in Whistler here. She was on the Canadian team for a while. she decided to go with some family heritage and race for Argentina. So let's see how this home track advantage for her for sure helps play out.
Tristan, how does the luge community see that? Because often people frown upon, sliding for another nation you might have an easier time qualifying for, but that also opens it up and gets more nations involved and potentially can recruit more athletes from Argentina.
Yeah, that is it depends on who you ask. So for some people, it's a sticking point. For a lot of people, you say, well, it is the Olympics. The Olympics should mean something. It should be the best of the best, and sometimes people, it can feel like people find an easier way to the Olympics, and sometimes I think that's when you can see people that, not necessarily Veronica, because she just had a great run there, sliding into first place. So definitely not Veronica, but sometimes you can see people that are maybe not prepared and maybe not the safest sliders sliding for other nations.
Dare I bring up the tragic accident of 2010, but the new time to beat is now 39.082 from the Argentinian home track athlete, Veronica Ravena. These are the cleanest lines we've seen. Her coach there has also been a great advocate for sliding sports and promoting Argentinian skeleton as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's it's again kind of one of those fine lines to walk. Where does it look good for the sport to have more nations competing? That roster looks bigger at the top, or does it not look so good for the sport if you have people that are going to potentially be hurting themselves?
On the handles, Austria's Madeline Egler.
Definitely not from a nation that should not be sliding. Austria has a long storied history of being a very successful luge nation. So let's see how Madeline does this run.
In the lead right out of the gate, Egler makes her way down curve 9 and onto curve 10 here.
Yeah, you can see here with the way the track is built right now, it's so nice, so smooth. There's actually really not much driving you have to do, and that's going to be one of the things that separates the slower runs from the faster runs is the amount of driving athletes do.
1500s ahead to work with, and she increases that slightly to 1600s. Your new leader, Austria's Madeline Egler.
Really good recovery out of 16 there. A little touch on the wall, but didn't panic, didn't let the sled really break out into a skid there, and that saved a lot of time for her. I don't think that. Here you go, right off the start. She's got Madeline's very tall. She's over 6 feet tall. She's got those long arms, and that makes her quite a quick starter. Have that leverage on the start.
Yeah, one of my favorite analogies is Usain Bolt. If you can have the same turnover with longer levers, you're going to move farther faster.
Absolutely.
Now the question is, how long will that lead last? As Egler was, of course, in our Nations Cup yesterday, qualifying middle of the pack for today's race.
Yeah, 38 on the start there. That's the first time we've seen an athlete go under 3.40. So that's 3.38 on the start. So that's definitely going to be one of the starts to beat. It's one of the fastest I've seen all week.
Start record is a 3.34. That is not too far off. This could get interesting as far as start records go today. To the top on the handles, Olena Stetsky of Ukraine.
Three paddles down that ramp there, but a really solid settle into the sled. So there's again that playing around with risk versus reward on that. That looks like it was really nice settle into the sled, and she's starting off with a pretty good position. Really pushing back. That's what we like to see there with the head back. See if she can keep that up as the track gets faster down here.
That's a great way to see an athlete's comfort on a track, is how high their head is.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that a lot here because of the way the track is. Like, these lines are absolutely beautiful, but a little behind on the time with and already popping out a little bit early. That's something that you really want to make sure that you're across the finish line before you pull any limbs keep your hands and legs inside the vehicle.
Is it pretty easy to see there from when you come out of 16 to see your goal over the finish line? There's a big
absolutely.
red marker.
There's a bridge up above you where if you have your head flat back, which she did, you can see when you're across the finish line. So I don't know if they're going to show it again here, but that will cost you a little bit of time in a sport that's timed to the thousandth of a second. You can see here. See the red line on the ice, and she's already getting ready to get out of the sled. And
is that illegal by chance to cross the line without your hands in the sled?
You have to be in contact with the sled and not paddling up the hill.
Interesting. And oftentimes anxiety can get the best of you. We saw that in the 2002 Olympics in skeleton, where Tristan Gale was lifting her hands up to her helmet before crossing the line.
All right, McKenna Hodgson, Mackie. Mackie's had a great summer training up with the national team, and she's made some pretty big jumps this year. It's really good to see her come out of her comfort zone a little bit and push for a little bit more speed.
At just 19 years old, she finished 19th in Lake Placid 2 weeks ago. Did you guys get extra training with that time off between Lake Placid and this race?
We were here for a little bit of it. There was an international training week, but we have so many runs from being here in the fall, and we know that when the track crew has set it up really, really well like this, it's one of those tracks that you can't overthink because you have to do so
because of those lower starts.
Yeah. And there's very few times where you can say that runs are not valuable.
Oh, just 500s back for the young athlete from Canada.
500s behind Madeline. Now, Madeline's usually a top 10 slider, so this tells me that maybe she had not that good of a Nations Cup. If she's usually, because you race in reverse order by rank in Nations Cup, you come down expecting to be in that first place position because you have already beaten that person the day before. So that tells me that Madeline maybe didn't have a run that she was really happy with in Nations Cup and had a better one today.
McKenna just saying that she didn't like the top. She was a little bit skitty. One of the best ways to go into a second heat is with things to improve. As we go back to the handles for another young athlete, Brittany Art of the U.S.
Brittany. Come on, Brittany, dig!
There's Bill up at the start.
Billy T cheering Brittany on.
Trying to bring some of that energy into the start of the run.
Bill comes from bobsled as well, so it makes sense for him to bring a bobsled cheer into that.
So 42 on the start, not the fastest we've seen, but also not the slowest. So see if she can drive her way a bit to bit up the ladder here.
Brittany finished 13th in the season opener at Eagles, but did not race Lake Placid, correct?
Yes. Good looking lines here, and managing to hold that deficit.
136.5 kilometers an hour, dropping her feet to stay stable. She is 1100ths back behind the pace. That puts her in third position behind Madeline Egla, your current leader from Austria.
That could have been a lot worse coming up the outrun there. Again, anytime you're going uphill, a mistake is amplified, just because you have gravity working against you and not with you. So that's. But up until there, the run looked really clean. Maybe a bit of an overdrive. I just noticed that in 12 there. If you drive too hard, you can see a bit of the snow flying off. So it's not just a big sideways drift that can cost you time. But if you step on it a bit too hard in 12 there, you see some of the snow spraying off the steels. That's also something that's going to start to bleed time as that builds up down the track.
Up to the top for veteran Raluca Strămăturaru of Romania.
Yeah, absolutely a veteran. She's, I think we're going to see some really solid lines down the track here. She's really quite a solid slider.
Raluca has been sliding for 24 years, which so far is older than I think every competitor we've seen is her sliding experience.
Yeah, probably sliding longer than, most of them have been alive, so. You know, even that start there, it's quite forgiving. There's obviously an ideal line to get into 7, but a little left, a little right, it's so wide open up there that you can get around that corner almost any way you want without really costing yourself too much time.
And I imagine it helps having that speed from the grade of the ramp now.
Yes, that gets you a little bit of speed. You see it's still kind of stuck in the gutter of 7 around the top. A little bump early onto 13, recovered really nicely.
That bump used to be game over in this track's past. Oh, Stramaturaro was struggling at the finish there. She is just over a 10th behind. That puts her in 4th position. Duncan Kennedy, former American athlete, coaching the Romanians.
So it sounds like that prediction of seeing most of the mistakes today coming out of 16 is coming true. That's a really, it's not necessarily...
is that a fly or die race day approach?
I'm not quite sure. I think a lot of people have had problems with it throughout the week, but it's not necessarily difficult, but tricky.
Yeah, we're seeing
there is a nuance to that that's kind of hard to explain, but there's tell
us all the best line in 16. So Luge World would love to hear it.
You gotta let it loop there. So corners are not uniformly. They don't have a uniform radius around them. Sometimes they're tighter and sometimes they're more open, and that's what are known as pressure points, where the radius closes, and dead spots where the radius opens, and that's where you see athletes pick up and drop in the corner, and that's called a loop.
To the top for Ashley Ferguson of the USA.
Now, something that we saw Ashley do really well there is lay down in the hole, and the hole at the bottom of the ramp, as the ramp flattens out from steep to flat, if you can hit your sled hard in that hole, then you can actually get a little bit of a forward push, kind of
like use the negative G's there.
like pumping your legs on a swing.
Yeah.
You can, if you hit the sled, that will actually accelerate the sled, and she looked like she timed that really well.
Ooh.
Little bump early on the 13, but again, pretty good recovery. That's going to cost a little bit of time, especially with that feet down there. But again,
shows how much trouble Madeline had yesterday. She has been leading the race for quite some time now. Oh, over 2/10 back for the young athlete from the U.S.
Yeah, that feet down there is not the fastest way. Obviously, you're adding friction, but also you can't drive the sled once your feet are down. So that's one of the things that you're going to be looking for is. Feet down in a straightaway can actually rock the sled back onto some of the sharper parts of the steels, and you can fix a skid with feet down in a straightaway. But once you're in that curve, that's like letting go of the steering wheel. You want the feet up and be driving, because that's how you drive a luge sled. You have to.
Is it tough to fight that instinct? I imagine your whole body's going mayday.
Absolutely.
And you just want to put your feet down on that bike.
It's absolutely tough to fight that instinct because most of the time it works. You can fix a skid, but with touching your feet down. But you do need to have your feet up to drive when you're in the corners. So that is something that will kind of get weeded out along the way as you fight some of those instincts.
Our second Canadian of the day. Your teammate, Carolyn Maxwell.
Carolyn Maxwell is quite the starter, so let's see if she can beat Madeline on the start here with
just 3 paddles.
With just 3 paddles. Yeah, that is 2/100ths faster than the fastest start we've seen, so that's really impressive from Maxwell here.
Just 2/100ths off of the start record.
Just 2/100ths off the start record, so that's really good to see from her.
Very promising for the 19-year-old from Calgary.
Let's see, a little late to 10, but again, the green, as our coach calls it, the green line is quite wide open. She could be pushing back a little bit more with her position, but she seems to settle into a groove now.
And when you say pushing back, you mean use the comfort of a home track and lay your head back?
Like this. Yeah, you want to see just the top of that visor poking up from above the torso.
Down, second still to Austria's Madeline Egla, Carolyn Maxwell.
Just 500ths back, and there was a little bit of trouble up top, but something tells me that could be more setup. The Austrians are notorious for being quick in warmer conditions. And a red light. That's not very good. That red light at the bottom there means you are getting your stuff checked out. You'll be weighed and have some elements of your equipment checked out. That's just a random test to make sure everyone's kind of following the rules.
Is that a full check between heats?
That will be That's not a full check. The technical check is red and blue, and that's when you're going to go in and get your sled ripped apart, and they're going to look more in depth at your actual sled. Whereas the other one is just a check to make sure that your weight is good, your equipment is. You're not trying to sneak any extra weight down the track with you here. Another big, tall athlete, long levers. Trinity is 3 paddles again, but with those long arms, that turnover is going to be a bit slower. So that's I think she's in her comfort zone with 3 paddles there.
Trinity Ellis from Canada, another young athlete at just 17, and she heads into curve 9 a bit late. Is that technical?
That is kind of technical. There's a couple different ways to get into curve 9. If you can be bringing it back to the entrance of curve 9 from a later entrance, that can help with angles. But it's all angles there.
I overheard the U.S. coaches talking about that yesterday in order to avoid that double bobble if you go on too early. Trinity Ellis with a big loop in the beginning of 16 just manages the exit, threw it down.
Good recovery to not skid there.
Nearly 2/10 back. Trinity's had a great breakout season. She finished 9th in the LP sprint. That's in Lake Placid, and she finished 8th in Innsbruck.
Yeah, really good results for a fresh-faced athlete coming up and racing. She had a little bit of experience last year with the team. She got to race World Championships and another World Cup after World Championships last year. But yeah, the team right now, our team, is all very young. There's me, my doubles partner Justin Smith, and Reed Watts are the only ones born before the year 2000, which is kind of it can be a little exasperating looking at those numbers.
Not just the numbers, but the cultural differences when you have teammates that young. That's the interesting thing about Luge. You can have athletes that are in their 40s on teams with athletes in their 20s. As we go to our 4th Canadian of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. With that age spread, sometimes I can feel a little bit stuck halfway between a coach and a teammate. 15
sleds remain. And this is Brooke Apstrom.
When I talked about the ideal line into curve 7, you just saw it there. Nice and close to the left wall there, and then tuck it right over, almost like cutting an apex in a race car into curve 7 there, into the start curve.
Now this is the first we've seen Brooke this season.
Looks like she's having a great run. Nice and tucked in, looks really confident on the sled here.
Brooke should be gaining speed, 130.4 kilometers an hour, 600s back. Can she gain at the finish? Oh, decreased a little. 4th place.
A little bit, yeah. And this
at the 20-year-old Canadian.
At this point, this far back, 14 sleds back, we could potentially be seeing the ice conditions start to deteriorate a little bit.
And you've got a sweet Canadian race there for the second heat
Absolutely,
coming up with
yeah,
Carolyn McKenna and Brooke, all back to back
That's going to be interesting with that shuffled, seeing how much of the track conditions are playing into this. Obviously, she's quite a ways back from the start order of McKenna. So we will see if the track conditions now are. You can see even here a bit of a kind of a frosting showing up on the track, a bit of a shine there. That does obviously increase friction on the steels. So as you come down the list, it's going to be harder and harder to have top.
Okay.
On the handles, our first German athlete of the day, Cheyenne Rosenthal.
Germans always known for their fast starts.
That's the nice thing about a system that gets so many athletes in. Then you have time to start weeding out those that have maybe the potential for a growth spurt.
Absolutely,
and a strength spurt.
The way they recruit, I think I believe there's a school program where almost every kid in Germany is exposed to the sport at least at some point, and they get to choose anyone they see with potential. So it creates a really broad base where you are going to have the cream rising to the top.
As evidenced by just 19 years old, but with 11 years of sliding experience already. She's the 2019 Junior World Champion. Ooh, a little bit late into 16 there, big height.
And that is something with this track you are going to notice with the speeds. In bobsled, speed is everything. But in bobsled also, there's only so many ways that you can cross the speed trap. It is done by 2 timing eyes that does the simple speed distance time kind of calculation to give you your speed. So on this track, you can, I think the highest speeds, you'll actually notice some of the slower times because it's going to be a late line into 16 and you're going to be getting all that pressure at once and biting into the ice, and it does slow you down. So
that's a really interesting point and a nuance of luge with those speed traps.
Yes.
Like you said, every bobsled is generally going to be the same. You can get pretty consistent speed traps.
Yeah, you get the nose of the bobsled, and that's something that gets amplified even more in doubles, especially Calgary was notorious for that. You have double sleds coming and having a speed reading of over 140 kilometers an hour, and that is definitely not the case. And really, that's just limbs and lines kind of going over the timing eye and through the timing eye, extending the distance or shortening it, and
limbs and lines and eyes as we go up to the top for the start timing eyes. The second German athlete, Anna Bereiter.
37, really good start there. One of the quickest we've seen. Second place start.
Anna had 6 Junior World Cup wins last year. A great testament to the system that Germany has for preparing athletes for this top level. They also bring junior athletes, high performers, out to the Olympics. I'm not sure if you've seen this. They all come out so that they have a chance to experience all of that energy, because as you know, your first Olympics is really overwhelming.
Absolutely. That's why Justin and I were brought up for 2010 to be on the team for that, and it is it's good to be able to experience an Olympics with really no pressure to be producing a result. That's something obviously our coach, coming from the German system, has brought over. They push to have some of the younger athletes get that Olympic experience, because it can be overwhelming, and to have both of those things hit you, the expectations to be producing a good result and have your first Olympics can be pretty tough. So it's really good to have some of the younger athletes come out and get to experience that without being totally wide-eyed and shocked throughout an entire Olympic Games.
Your new leader, Anna Bereiter, from Germany by 17 hundredths of a second. That's the largest margin we've seen, but would expect nothing less from a German.
Yeah, and we're, I'm sure you can tell, we are talking a bit about, more about stuff that we're not seeing on TV here right now, because as we get into these more experienced sliders, the variation between the lines should be really coming down. The track's set up so nice right now that you really have to not do too much. So as we get into these top sleds, there's likely not going to be much to see between the sleds.
3.38 start for Russia's Ekaterina Baturina.
Russia's slider Baturina, 4/100ths back in the first interval, 17:02.
Baturina seems to be having a tough season this year. She's currently ranked 17th. She has 2 16th place finishes in Innsbruck and Lake Placid, just missing out on that sprint race in Lake Placid. 300ths behind the pace set by Anna Bereiter from Germany. Oh, and that grows to a 10th. That's still good enough for second position for Russia's Ekaterina Baturina, but we could see Anna Bereiter hold on to that lead for a little bit here.
Absolutely, yeah. That was a fairly unremarkable run.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, yeah. It's in luge, the more boring the run, usually the more boring it looks, usually the faster it is. So it's
bad for television, great for the athlete.
Absolutely. Little touch out of 16 there. Obviously, that is going to cost you some time, but no big sideways skid. The steels looked like they were all tracking parallel for at least the vast majority of it, so that's not going to cost you too much, but obviously not ideal.
And of course, at this level, it is about fine details, especially on a track where you're starting at the former junior start.
There we go. Caitlin and Natalie, you just saw on that scene there, will be making history tomorrow. The first ever females doubles team to compete against men on the World Cup level.
Very exciting. But first we have Switzerland's Natalie Mag.
To the lady start. Downtime for Baturina was good. It was 38.
Yeah, it can be a little bit painful watching the women's and doubles sleds come through curve 7 there, because it's a great big curve that when we used to slide through there, we were up on the wall.
Luder's Loop, there's a reason the gut named Luder's Loop.
And to be puttering around the gutter in curve 7 from from the current doubles and women's World Cup start is sometimes can be their spectators around even making eye contact with them.
Meg is at 2/10 behind the pace. Her top speed 131.9. She'll be through and down just over 2/10 back with a 38.9.
Interesting, because that was, again, a fairly unremarkable run.
And that's the fastest speed that we've seen.
Yeah.
Oh, except for maybe Brittany Arndt's at 136 that we have trouble by.
Those big variations there. I wonder if we see that 15-16 there and what that line looks like. Because the ideal line out of 15, you actually come across the timing eyes to get nice and early to 15. Or nice and early to 16. You're going to come out more on the middle side from 15, crossing early to 16. So that actually, you're not straight line between 2 points. So the timing eyes and speed trap will read that as a slower time, but it is the faster line.
10 sleds remain here in Whistler, BC. I'm Bree Schaff, joined by Tristan Walker, 2018 Canadian silver medalist. Eliza Seltza from Latvia, the second athlete in our seeded group.
Longtime veteran of the Latvian national team. She's always a staple on the World Cup circuit. There we go with the Latvians' motivation on the start again. That was better than her teammate in that settle there. Ula Zern had a bit of a bobble on the start, and that's gonna kind of be weighing on her mind. But Eliza rocking into curve 11 here. Looks like a pretty solid line. Only 200ths behind.
And Elisa is another small athlete from Latvia. It surprises me because their male athletes are so large, and yet most of their female athletes at Luge are slight.
That is rather indicative of the actual population. If you spend a lot of time in Latvia, or enough time in Latvia like we do, that's a pretty good reflection. There
1800ths behind for Latvia's Seltza.
I think we're going to see here. There was a interesting little thing that happened out of curve 11 here. It looks like she tried to bring it over early to the entrance of 12, and it just took off on her. It ended up being I'm sure much more of an aggressive drive than she wanted it to be, and that could be due to the soft ice. And that makes the soft ice makes her steels bite more, which means, here, watch this.
Oh, really aggressive drive. And if you can see that in Luge, then that athlete is working hard.
Yeah, and so soft ice, steels bite more, small inputs have bigger reactions, and that could be looking at, again, what conditions are causing problems with the athletes.
A forced early entrance cuts Seltza to land in 4th position behind your leader, Anna Bereiter. But on the handles, we have USA's Emily Sweeney, currently 4th in the overall ranking.
Getting in the zone. We're going to hear some more bobsled style motivation down the ramp here. Clock burner.
Sweeney taking it down to the wire for start time. What is the start clock in Luge?
They have 30 seconds to, sorry, I had to think about it because it's 45 for doubles.
Oh, right.
Singles has 30 seconds to get off the handles, and the interesting fact about that is you don't have to cross the start line, you just have to be out of the handles.
Oh,
but if you are still sitting in the handles when that clock hits 0, then it's a DSQ.
Sweeney is behind the pace set by Anna Bereiter of Germany. Nice early entrance into 16, 132.1, one of the better speeds we've seen. Sweeney crosses the finish line with a 38.86.
Little bit of a safety tap there. I don't even know if her feet actually made it all the way to the ice. She's been known to.
That's right. One of her frustrations in years past.
Yeah, to drop those feet sometime unnecessarily, but over the last couple of seasons, actually, it looks like she's got it under control. But that's I'm sure a habit she is constantly working on.
Yeah. Sweeney's coming off of a 3rd place sprint finish in Lake Placid and a 2nd place singles race.
Caught that skid. That was huge.
Another one of the Americans hitting that flop onto the sled right down in the compression from the ramp to the flat, and that will give you a bit of a push into the track there.
39.
I
felt
to hear
on my
it from Sweeney herself. She was not pleased with that run, with a bit of skid issues at the top.
Yeah, maybe just a bit of overdriving. It didn't look too bad from our end, but you're always going to be your own worst critic at the bottom of a run, for sure. You feel a lot of times you'll look at the run and be like, oh, it really wasn't that bad, but you know what's happening under your butt better than anyone else, and that's gonna.
Right off the handles, Latvia's Candia Apriod, the last Latvian in today's competition.
Third so far after 20 down, already an accomplishment.
Tristan, you find that this helps you at all going into the race tomorrow, getting a good close look, analyzing the ice conditions, because the weather is supposed to be similar tomorrow.
It will be similar, yeah. It will factor into what we're setting up, what we're, not necessarily how we're driving, because there's not too many different ways to bring the sled down the hill here. Interesting that another Latvian, tried to bring it over a little bit to 12, and it looked like the sled started to take off on her as well. I'm sure we'll see that again, that little bit of...
Up and looking for the finish. Apriod comes down in 10th place, just over 0.2 of a second behind.
So I'm sure we'll see it again here. That exit of 11, that little bit of a touch over to early to 12, and it looked not as bad as her teammate Eliza, but the sled definitely started to go there. It didn't push her as early, but I'm sure she'd rather have that nice straight push off of 11 rather than need to bring it over in the flat
Tristan,
flat section.
I'm glad you're pointing that out, because that was something I noticed through the training in Nations Cup yesterday. Is it seemed like a lot of the athletes were forcing that entrance as if there is an emergency situation there.
Well, that is left over from when 12 you had to be perfect.
The old days. So anyone that was here on the old 12.
If you 12 is currently. It used to be and currently is where the hardest place you have to drive on the track, but it used to be so much more unforgiving, where if you were not on an early entrance and you didn't really hammer it through 12, it would kick you over and tip you on the entrance of 13.
Back to the top for our third German of the day, Jessica Thibault.
Not quite as fast as we would normally be expecting from the German sliders, but that said, there are some missing German sliders right now. We had 3 massive retirements from the German team. Not retirements, hiatuses. Two of them out for having their first babies. So congratulations to Diana Eiberger and Natalie Geisenberger for that. But a big retirement in
Tatiana Hooper. I mean, all 3 of those athletes, just such mainstays in this sport, opening things up for the young Germans that have been champing at the bit, waiting to move up. Second place for Thibault, just behind teammate Anna Bereiter.
Yeah, any given race of the year in years past, you would see 1 or 2, if not all 3 of those German sliders on the podium, and that has opened the door a bit for some other athletes to bring up their results.
The 2018 Junior World Champion finished 3rd this year's opener in Innsbruck. And I wonder if this group is as comfortable here as Diana and Natalie and the rest of the crew. I've seen them going off men's start here before. Obviously quite comfortable with the speed of Whistler and wishing for more.
Off men's start and even further up the track. Old men's start, sliding off where the bobsled and skeletons race from.
At the top, the last American slider of the day, USA's Summer Britcher.
Speaking of someone who is no stranger to the podium, it is always disappointing when you have that team meeting and you get your bib tossed to you from the coach that has just come back from the team captain's meeting, and you see that you are the last draw, especially on a day that you know the conditions are not going to favor people further down the start list.
We're counting down to our last sleds here in the first heat of the women's race. Oh no, a huge hit for Summer
going
Britcher.
To be happy at all with that. There's, we've talked a lot about how easy this track is and right now and how it's set up, but it is still luge. There are still things that that small mistakes can have big consequences.
We were just saying that the most interesting thing that I saw in training yesterday was Pavlichenko going early onto corner 7, and so far this women's race has proved to be so tricky.
Yeah,
Do you think the conditions are that really late?
And again, that's pretty common after having an issue at the start right there to be able to. He is not happy to be able to collect yourself and focus on the run, focus on the rest of the run. That's she's going to be really disappointed with that.
Really tough first run for USA's Summer Britcher. That does put her in 23rd in the last position right now. She certainly has plenty of spots to climb on the second heat, but that is quite disappointing for the athlete that's had such a great season so far. Second place in Innsbruck, 4th place in Lake Placid, 2nd place Lake Placid Sprint. Where did that go wrong, Tristan?
It looked like she was just a little bit uncomfortable with being that far left and started driving a bit too soon. I don't know. You know what? She didn't even have her hands in yet. It could have been a bit of a crooked laydown, trying to nail that flop that we were talking about the other American girls were really nailing in that compression as the ramp meets the flat. It might have been a bit of an uneasy laydown in there that kicked the sled to the right, and little touch off the boards and the entrances of corners once the angles become sharp will really tip you right
break
quick.
There for the talented American, as we have 5 sleds remaining in the women's first heat. Victoria Demchenko of Russia, fresh off the handles and into curve 7. Keep an eye on the red on your screen. That's the indicator of whether the athlete is behind or ahead of your leader. She's currently 600ths behind our current leader, Anna Breiter of Germany, who has been hanging on since the Nations Cup ranking.
Now, Victoria is one of those athletes in the sport of luge that's known as a bottom gainer. Not necessarily the fastest up top, but picks up speed down the track. Not seeing that right now, kind of building the deficit.
Laying back across the finish, 5th place for Demchenko.
But again, that's there's a number of factors that go into that. With a relatively decent run, She's
got some good size, but maybe just this isn't a long enough course for her size to help her out.
Yeah, possibly. It is only it is a sub 40-second track, so that's usually that the momentum that you have from being one of the larger athletes will help carry you on a longer track. Definitely in a situation where you're going uphill, where you carrying some more energy up the hill but obviously not quite enough here. But also, again, there's lots of factors that go into it. Could be not really nailing the setup for the warm conditions, or even, again, the track deteriorating as it gets warmer. It's difficult. Whistler is always quite humid, so that factors into what they can do with the refrigeration system, the ice. If they have the ice really cold and the humidity, it will build up that layer of frost. So that's going to make it, that kind of ties the hands of the track crew with keeping the ice as fair as they can for all of the athletes.
Off the handles, Russian teammate Tatiana Ivanova.
36, fastest start we've seen so far.
Ivanova is known for her starts. She's currently ranked 3rd in the overall. She won the season opener in Innsbruck, had a little bit tougher time in Lake Placid with an 8th place finish, and then rallied back for a 5th place in the sprint event.
Yeah,
Ivanova went from 13th to 1st place in Innsbruck.
Ladder climb. That's quite rare.
It's pretty unprecedented at this level.
Short of having really challenging conditions where maybe you get favored by snow or stuff, that's usually.
Ooh, she's got 200s to work with. Currently in the lead, she crosses the line, maintains that by 9 thousandths of a second. Your new leader, Russia's Tatiana Ivanova.
Yeah, I think anyone that really followed the sport closely would have put their money on Ivanova having a really good season this year with those missing Germans.
As we were talking about earlier, we have 6 athletes not in the field this year that were just consistent top 6 finishers last year, which opens things up quite a bit for this field.
Russians always interesting with their celebrations.
Yeah,
Do you guys vie for the person in the box for it to be on camera? How do you decide that?
That is, that's always given to our team physio. So
Oh,
I don't
really?
know how other teams. I don't know if Carrie likes being in that spot, but it's kind of directed from the top down
honorable
from the head
physio
coach.
mention as we head back to the top. Just 3 sleds remain in the first heat of women's singles. Ekaterina Katnikova, the last Russian slider of the day. Katnikova's start time of 3.40. Just 800ths off of the start record.
Katnikova 3.408.
Again, you see that little bit of a push into curve 9, and that helps with some angles to not, when you're going that slow to curve 9, it helps to not ride 9 twice, which is just adding meters and obviously longer distance, more time.
And again, that forced entry to 11 that you mentioned earlier, Tristan. 1,500ths behind the pace set by her teammate, 131.6 kilometers an hour. Katnikova crosses in 8th position. No dance planned for 8th position there.
I guess not. You gotta be. I'm sure you have to be in podium position to get a. I think that's a Russian team doctor there. So I think it's pretty common to have someone on the support staff be put in the reaction booth. But I'm sure anyone that gets stuck in there has to constantly be thinking of different things to do. See if we're going to see that exit of 11 there. A little bit of oh, didn't show it again. But again, it's something we've seen a lot of athletes do. Try to bring it earlier to curve 12, and that again, that's just an instinct thing. You want to be nice and early to curve 12, whereas it actually, in most cases, it might be better to just let it go late and then drive a little bit harder once you're in 12, because
Forced lines on soft ice are
yeah,
not fast.
you end up with unfavorable angles.
On the handles, Italy, Andrea Vetter.
Good solid 4 paddles. A little squirrely with the laydown. You see the sled shift left and right as she transitioned from paddling into laydown. That has kind of backfired on a couple athletes so far. Fortunately for Andrea, she got a nice solid lie down in the sled.
Ooh, Vetter already in the lead ahead of Russia's Tatiana Ivanova. But this is going to go back and forth. She's now 1,000th different as she goes a little bit early onto 11. I imagine that's the blessing, the curse of luge is your ability to drive into straightaways, and that's what you're saying athletes are going to have to fight right now.
Absolutely, yeah. You can see she had pretty
late in the 16.
You're going to be that's going to be a big loop, and that loop covers a lot more meters, and you'll see reflected right here that it cost her a significant amount of time. 3rd
place for Vetter, though, which is a great position to be in going into our 2nd heat. Things to improve. She knows she has some time to make up.
Yeah, to be that close from that far back in the field, that's going to help her. The track being a lot closer to her current close competitors is going to help her a lot when they're sharing similar track conditions in the second run. But yeah, this late line in 16, up close, good hard drive there. So didn't panic, didn't let the sled. Didn't give up driving. That's one of the most important things, is that once you go late, you have a problem like that, you have to keep fighting. That's and really there it becomes a fight. Lucky to keep that top 3 spot.
Curve 16,
right now.
never give up.
Yeah.
And that curve is brutal when you hit that G-force all at once and late, as we have 1 sled remaining in the first heat of the Women's World Cup Luge here in Whistler, BC. Your current leader, Julia Taubitz of Germany.
Yeah, a sled you wouldn't really expect to have the late start number have that much of an effect on her. Obviously wearing that yellow bib. She's done quite well for herself so far this season. So little ways back on the start, but known to be able to pick that up down the track.
Fire up here, 3.42 start. Trying to get a 30.
Taubitz has dominated the last 2 races, 2 wins in Lake Placid. Taking home the sprint as well has put her solidly in the lead of our standings. There are many races yet to come. Ooh, she is in the red behind Tatiana Ivanova of Russia.
Little mistakes, they're subtle, but they're not going to help.
A 10th, will that expand? Talbot's through and down, 900ths behind the pace. That's a 4th place position.
Managed to reel that in. That's surprising. That was surprising to see, to be on a little bit falling back and then picking up speed with mistakes, but that's
the German way.
That is the German way. They know the fast walls to hit.
And it's especially interesting to see with a slider that's as small as Julia compared to her teammates. Not her current teammates, but her former teammates, the great Natalie Geisenberger, Diana Eitberger, Tatiana Hufner. But there's the confidence of experience. And Julia Taubitz knows that she's got some things to work on in the second heat as we wrap things up here. There's your leader, Tatiana Ivanova of Russia, looking forward to a second heat. She's got 9,000ths on second place. Anna Bereiter. Italy's Andrea Voter in third position, and Julia Taubitz, your current World Cup leader, is going to be trying to climb ahead in the ranks. Jessica Thiebel of Germany in fifth, and Ekaterina Baturina in sixth place. That rounds out your top six. Emily Sweeney of the USA just outside the top six in seventh place.
Yeah, a couple really close times in there. It looks like
and then the Canadian battle starting in 13th place, 13, 14, 15. That is going to be an interesting set there on the second heat.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sure they were looking for a little bit more on their home track, but we'll see what they can pull out on the second run.
That does it for our first heat here in Women's World Cup Luge in Whistler, BC. Do not go far. We expect things to really heat up here. This should be an exciting race. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the second heat of Women's World Cup Luge here in Whistler, British Columbia. I'm Bree Schaff, pleased to be joined by Tristan Walker, 2018 Canadian Olympic silver medalist. It was a very exciting first heat. The conditions played a big role, and Tristan, you were saying that you might see, some setup changes here for the second heat.
Yeah, absolutely. These are some of the most difficult conditions to match your equipment to. You can see the ice is actually above the freezing point, which means it's very, very soft. Means a sharp, high angle, narrow edge steel is going to bite into that ice and just slow you down the entire way. So it's you're going to be looking for steels that float on top of the soft ice right now, rather than steels that bite, which is what you would want for kind of colder, harder ice conditions.
A quick review of our course here. The start goes into curve 7 here in Whistler for the ladies and the doubles. And we're going to take a quick look at our top 3 finishers from the first heat.
There's Andrea Vada there kind of throwing the hands up. A mistake like that is going to cost you big here in Whistler, where it's always really close. We have a race that is only 0.3 of a second up to the 10th, back to the 10th place. So that's a close race, and it's going to be interesting to watch see who gets shuffled here.
Ivanova, Bereiter, and Vetter are the top 3, these sleds to watch and these sleds to beat here in heat number 2. The second heat will be going reverse order from the slowest sled to the fastest sled of the first heat.
That reverse order by rank for the second run is also one of the interesting things that can play into who got what track conditions on the first run. If you had a bib here that was later in the start order, and you get to be more evenly matched with some of your competitors for ice conditions the second run, that could be a big advantage.
One of the difficult aspects of Nations Cup racing is you're trying to get into the seeded groups. Our first athlete in the second heat, USA's Summer Britcher, who had a really unfortunate first run.
Yeah, I'm sure Summers at this point is just looking to show everyone what she can do. Not really going to be looking for a big result after that tipping the sled over in the start curve on the first run. That is absolutely a death sentence for a race, and she being over almost 2 seconds back from the leader. There's not much hope, but just showing everyone what she could have done.
A redemption run for Britcher as she looks to hang in the leader's box for as long as possible.
This is looking like a nice clean run, looking fairly comfortable. And I wouldn't be, with Summer being first off, getting the cleanest ice, I wouldn't be surprised if this is up there with one of the fastest runs of the second run.
38.82 for Britcher. Combined time of 1 minute 19.465 seconds.
Which is, that's, I think she'll be happy with that run, but unfortunately no chance to move that far up short of other athletes having catastrophic mistakes like her
For an
first run.
athlete that's grown into being one of the top competitors, you know, as you're younger, you might take some sort of solace in the fact that, okay, this is where I could have been, but for Britcher, that's just not going to be enough.
No, this is, I think this is going to be a write-off weekend for her. She's, looks like she's already shaken it off, though. Looking forward to the new year.
Right.
27 sleds remain. Back to the top for Latvia's Ula Zerna.
Another one at the back of the pack here had problems in the start corner. Not as bad as Summer. She didn't actually come off of her sled, but again, almost a full second behind from the lead. That's really good, really tough to build any build.
Ula has a chance to gain places as well. She's in the green still ahead of Britcher. Britcher, of course, ended up 1.8 seconds back, I believe, from her leader. So Ula might have enough of a lead that Britcher doesn't get to do that leader's box dance.
Yeah, I think we're gonna watch that. We're gonna watch that stay green pretty much the whole way down here.
So Zerna, the other athlete with the big mistake at the start, will be the one to watch in the leader's box. Does she take a tap through the finish line? But
falling, you can see that time behind was changing on the way down, so that means Summer had a pretty good run.
39.04 for Ula.
But I think they might.
That's 0.6 faster than her first run.
They can go chat with each other about the start corner.
Zerna makes up as much time as she can, but unfortunately, Tristan, like you were saying, there is no room for error in luge, especially when it's right off the bat and you kill your velocity with a mistake at the start. So it carries over to the second heat for Zerna, who is leading for now. Will probably be taken down quickly by the athletes to come who had clean starts on the first heat.
Yeah, this track particular, any mistake at the start is really amplified because of where the start got dropped to from its original start height. This section of the track is actually the start section of this track was actually the previous mid section of the track, which ends up making it so your first bunch of corners are really flat, not much elevation drop, not much chance to pick up speed. So that a strong start is really gonna show up on the finish time.
Hannah Prock off the handles. She was the last to qualify in the Nations Cup.
Yeah, being last in the Nations Cup, obviously have some problems in there. That's a blessing and a curse, especially you can be right on the cusp of not even qualifying for the race. So I'm sure with problems in the Nations Cup, she's happy just to be racing right now. But
high on the end of 15. Zerna is now 300ths back. Sorry, Prock is behind Zerna. 0.6.
Very similar mistake to her first run. As you can see, she's really not happy with that. I wonder if that's a grip issue right now, or if she's struggling that much with the lines on this track.
Right. At least in the first run, the bulk of the issues happened on the exit of 16. But Tristan, what is that like to go into curve 16 late like that, already in trouble?
That's something we call getting G-locked, which. You can see here, you miss a lot of the start of the corner and you get all of that turn all at once, and it will plaster you back into the sled. We don't, it's something that we can't even really measure the max G-forces, but we know the average around the corner can get up to 4 or 5 Gs, but the instantaneous G-forces there, the short instant G-forces can be probably higher than that when you get it all at once like that.
One of the more punishing scenarios in the sport of luge is late into corner 16 of Whistler as we go back to the top for Slovakia's Katarina Simonikova.
You You can see here where we were talking about the flat upper section of the track here, whereas before the start heights got dropped, that curve 7 there where you're just kind of puttering around the gutter used to be up totally sideways on the wall and playing with some more G-forces there and accelerating the sled, but it looks a little soft right now.
It's a different ball game when you're low around 7. Simonikova currently working with nearly 0.4 of a second ahead of the leader Ula Zerna, who had trouble at the start in the first heat. Clean exit, laying it back through the finish. Nearly 0.3 ahead. 39.10 for Simonikova.
Really pushing it back into an aerodynamic position up the hill there. You could actually see a little bit of the helmet pop out below the sled. So that's a sign of being really happy with your exit of 16, and just at that point with those couple seconds between the exit of 16 and the finish line, you're just sitting there willing the sled to get to the finish line faster.
Tristan, when you guys were going from the higher start, curve 7 used to have that bubble in the middle. Did that catch you guys as well, where that sometimes you would drop out a little bit?
Yeah, it was actually possible to take 2 lines through 7. There was an upper line and a lower line, and the more the sliders willing to risk a little bit more would be on that upper line. You get a bit more of a push and acceleration out of 7, but as you can see, barely even getting onto the corner here. That is not the case right now from sliding from this start height.
On the handles, Poland's Klaudia Domorodska.
Three solid paddles there. We were talking about the paddles on the first run. Again, one of those many aspects of luge where it is a balance between fast and safe. If you go for that fourth paddle but you can't quite handle it, that's when you can see some laying down in sled issues, some squirreliness as you transition from sitting to laying down, and that going for that fourth paddle and you can't handle it will cost you a lot more than anything that paddle can gain. So playing it a little bit safer with only 3 paddles, but paying off for her.
To work with. Correction, this is Elena Stetskev of the Ukraine who lays it back and takes the lead. Your new leader, the Whistler Women's World Cup, is Elena Stetskev.
Yeah, you see coming down in 4th place for this run, but built off the lead she built from the first run was enough to keep her in the same position that she was. So she's going to want to stay in that leader's box as long as possible. See if she can climb a couple more positions up.
On the handles, now we have Poland's Klaudia Domorodska. Currently 23rd. We are doing reverse order for the second heat, so each athlete, in theory, just has to maintain their lead.
Yeah, on the second run, you really want to come down and see a first place beside your name, because that means you're going to be at least the position that you finished the first run.
Is that pretty easy to see on a luge sled? That
yeah, there's a clock. I can point it out on after the finish here. You know almost right away where you're sitting.
Klaudia is losing time to the leader Stetskev.
Brought it down to just 0.007 of a second. That's it's really incomprehensible the amount of time that is to someone that doesn't regularly use those intervals.
Doesn't quite have the speed, whether that's relative or not. 39.27 finish time. That was a 5th place second run for Domorodska. That puts her into 3rd place overall. She drops behind both Elena Stetskev and Katerina Simonikova.
Looking here, this run was really nothing too remarkable about it, but that's the thing about luge again, that sometimes sometimes you can see absolutely nothing wrong, but just the way those steels are interacting with the ice, there's not enough glide, not enough push to let the sled really go. And some people that are better set up for the specific conditions might even have worse runs, and they'll still be ahead.
Let's do it.
On the handles, young American Ashley Farquharson. And Tristan, as you mentioned, the goal is often an unremarkable run in luge at this level.
Yeah, generally the more boring a run looks, the faster it is. It's like you said on the first run, it's not the best for the spectators, but what the athletes are really looking for.
And it's really tough to describe, too, the amount of control that you guys have on a luge sled over the sliding sports. The way those Kufen, your steels, are angled into the ice, you ultimately get to make most of the decisions.
Absolutely, yeah. We're the only one of the three sports that runs on a sharp edge, and that makes a big difference in how much control the sled has going down the hill.
Farquharson with a big lead, just over 0.3 of a second, 35/100ths for the young American.
She looks happy with that run. Let's see if she can climb the ladder a little bit and get herself a couple more spots.
She's certainly been climbing the ladder this season. She started with a 15th place finish in Innsbruck, where she had dropped from a great first run. 9th place in the Lake Placid singles race, and then a 4th place in the Lake Placid sprint.
Yeah, talking about that sharp edge, it is a bit of a trade-off, because once you start to get offline, it will make the G-forces in the corners pull you in bigger variations of
when it's wrong, it's so wrong.
Yeah, when it gets bad, it gets really bad. Whereas a skeleton sled, or not to so much of an extent a bobsled, gets offline, there's only so many ways the sled can go down the hill, because they don't have that bite into the ice with the sled tracking. Whereas on a luge sled, you get offline and the steels catch, the track will do whatever it wants with you.
On the handles, Canada's Trinity Ellis. While skeleton is certainly a demonstration of how the tracks are built to get you down if you can just flow with them, luge is such a great example. One of my favorite facts is to tell people that a doubles luge sled will often go faster than a four-man race. That's how much speed there is to be found if you can steer these G-forces, these pressures in the corners, as precisely as possible.
Absolutely. You're going to see them going through the corners, and there is the G-forces want to lift the sled. When we drive, we counteract that lifting action of the sled, and that energy has to go somewhere. So it actually pushes the sled forward. So in bobsled and skeleton, the corners, for the most part, will slow a sled down, whereas luge actually has the control and ability to manipulate those.
Oh no, 500's gone for the young Trinity Ellis. She was in the lead and lost it all in that finish straightaway coming out of curve 16. Ellis drops just behind Ashley Farquharson of the U.S.
That's too bad for Trinity. It's something like not getting through the finish curve on your home track can be pretty tough. But she's young. She'll be able to shake it off and start looking forward to the next race.
A great testament to the next generation. Trinity saw the Olympics here in 2010, pursued luge from there.
Yeah, absolutely. The track has produced some great sliders. Reed Watts is the first legacy baby, we call him, the first person that grew up sliding on the track, took his first runs here, and went to the Olympics.
Back to the top for Argentina's Veronica Ravena.
Speaking of home tracks, Veronica grew up sliding in Whistler as well, was on the Canadian team for a bit until she decided to take her talents south to some family heritage. She has family from Argentina, so she managed to get her citizenship and race the 2018 Olympics for Argentina. Looks like she dropped behind right off the bat.
Veronica finished 24th at those Olympics. She's already behind the pace on what we would consider her home track.
Yeah, that next split was going to be indicative of how she was sliding, and it looks like that lead is for Ashley is growing. So this is going to be really difficult for Veronica at this point to reel that in.
Mistakes compounding as Veronica Ravena crosses in third place. That second run was 6th overall of just the second heat. That is 12/100ths back of the pace set by American Ashley Farquharson.
That could be one of those cases of you look at Veronica's bib number 5 and Ashley's bib number 11. Ashley would have had slower ice than Veronica on the first run, so that could be playing into the difference, because Veronica's run here didn't look too bad, but it's obviously looks like she may have got a bit of an advantage from being so early in the start order on the first run.
And it's interesting because the top athletes go later in both heats in luge, and so they're never going to quite see that advantage of the early ice, and so it's very difficult to tell just how much the ice conditions are slowing down as we head back to the top for Raluca Stramaturaro of Romania.
Yeah, that is a bit of an equalizing force in luge, where the athletes that are ranked higher and have the bigger advantage get to go later in the start and don't have as much of help from the conditions of the track as they deteriorate.
Every once in a while, you'll see a great shakeup because of that.
Yeah, and again, that's it's a general rule of thumb, but it's not always the case. Sometimes, as a race will go into the night, as the sun goes down and the ambient temperature drops, the ice can actually get colder and harder and faster because of that. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, being later in the start order will actually be an advantage because the ice hardens up and gets a little bit quicker.
Men's singles up later today has some dropping temperatures to look forward to, but still hovering above freezing.
Pretty clean run here for Raluca. A lot better than her first run. She had a bit of driving mistakes through that bottom section there.
Taking a big peek as she crosses the finish line, 800ths ahead. Your new leader, Raluca Stramaturaro of Romania.
Something interesting Raluca did just as she crossed the finish line. You saw that foot go down. Sometimes on the tracks there are heights where the finish time laser crosses the track, and it can be an advantage to split the feet to make sure that no matter where the laser is, high, low, you're crossing it as soon as you possibly can. So you'll see some athletes that always do that. It can be one of the advantages of taking a look at the track, doing a track walk, and seeing, because when you're going over 130 kilometers an hour, even the length of a foot, and that's not 12 inches, that's your foot on the end of your leg.
Yeah, that's interesting insight, and that's a great testament to the experience of Stramaturaro, who's had 24 years on ice. To the top, a young athlete from America, Brittany Arndt.
You see that time difference there of just over 100th of a second. That getting your foot through the laser quicker than someone else could very well be that difference.
And bobsled, you'll see pilots dipping their head and going blind in order to gain just a bit of aerodynamic advantage.
Yeah, very, very similar to us as luge athletes putting the head back. Ends up with the same product of not really being able to see where you're going, but it is a little bit more aerodynamic.
Brittany Arndt, 500ths back behind the pace set by Raluca. Arndt looking really relaxed, just letting that sled glide onto 11. One of the few athletes is not forcing it onto the corner.
Yeah, super solid run, but still bleeding a little bit of speed. Nice clean exit for 16.
Through and down, laying it back. Ooh, 800ths behind. That's a 6th place run for Arndt. That drops her to 3rd. Raluca Stramaturaro remains in the lead. Brittany drops behind teammate Ashley Farquharson in second.
There was not really that much that I saw in that run that would be that indicative of dropping that much time. Not the strongest start, but also not too far off. Raluca with only 200ths back from where Raluca was on the start. So, again, possibly set up.
Do you have enough time to feel like you can really make a good change between heats there? I mean, some of these athletes are only getting 30 minutes before they're getting ready to go again.
Yeah, absolutely, and it depends on the level of support you have from your staff, from your a lot of time during the races. Athletes like to separate themselves from that technical aspect and just be in a good mental space. So that's a level of
focus on a better run rather than your equipment.
Yeah.
That makes sense for newer athletes like Brooke Apscrum from Canada, your teammate and the second Canadian in this second heat.
Really good correction on that fourth paddle. You can see that third one, there was a bit of a slip in the hand. And the time was a little bit slower than her first one. She won't be happy with that, but she avoided a big explosion in the laydown and something similar to what Ula or Summer did with a really strong fourth paddle. Lots of confidence to be able to put down that fourth paddle.
Early on to 12 there. A great testament to the experience on a home track.
Good, really good recovery. A little bump onto 12 on this track.
She doesn't have the speed. She's only got 100 to work with. Brooke crossing the finish line, and she keeps it 200s ahead of the pace. Your new leader, Canadian, Brooke Apstrom.
So, yeah, I think she's a little bit disappointed with those runs, but that was really good to see that correction. Obviously, it's obviously not ideal to need a correction, but when you do need one, 1, 2, 3, third paddle going to the right, and then see the sled twitch back to the left like that. That's really good to be able to stay calm and collected on that. Obviously, you don't want to need a correction, but having the level-headedness to be able to put that down
is a home track advantage. When you've experienced all the variables, you have a better chance of fixing them without too much effort.
That was really just a fraction of a second to be able to identify what's going on, and then a really strong fourth paddle that straightened her out.
Great correction from the 20-year-old as we go back to the top for Latvia's Candia Apriod. Have a listen to this yell. Do you know what he's shouting?
I'm not sure. It's loud, whatever it is.
It's a great approach. It definitely adds a bit of spice to the luge start. Oftentimes it feels like a bit of a golf match up there when everyone's silent, really pensive.
I find myself even sitting in the booth kind of hard to break that habit of not giving giving an athlete their kind of few moments of zen between
Feel
the
free
light
to
turning.
start shouting.
Between the light turning green and pulling out of the handles.
Apriod keeping the lead, 132.8 kilometers an hour. That's the fastest speed we've seen. Laying it back, 13 hundredths a second ahead of the pace. Your new leader, Candia Apriod of Latvia. That's quite a lead for Latvia's Apriod. She's currently ranked 12th overall.
Again, pretty unremarkable run. Looks like she cleaned up a little bit from her first run. I think she can be happy with that and see if she can hang out in the leader's box for a little while.
15 sleds remain in the second heat of Women's Luge World Cup. Stay tuned for the exciting finish.
Okay.
At the top of the hill, Natalie Mag of Switzerland, taking us into our top 15 from the first heat.
We were talking about the number of paddles we're doing. You can see on Natalie's fourth paddle there, it was not too much of an acceleration of the sled, and that's one of the things that you can actually, if you can't keep up with the sled with your arms, there's potential to actually be slowing the sled down.
Mag already in the red behind Apriod by 1/100th of a second.
But nice clean lines. See if she keeps falling back here.
She gained quite a few places in the first heat from her start number. 400s back. Natalie Mag crosses the finish line, 600s behind. That's second place overall behind Candia Apriod. Third place for her second heat. That means that Natalie can do no worse than 16th place.
Yeah, sometimes it can be hard reading emotions coming up the track. There's lots of things going through your head, but it is, I know from personal experience, it is disappointing to come across that line and not see a time that you were expecting, especially with such a nice clean run like this.
One of the more brutal scenarios in sliding sports is a clean, slow run.
Absolutely, where you know you had a solid start, you know you had a solid run, and you come up and the time's just not there.
At the top, Canada's McKenna Hodgson.
Mackie Luge. See if she can hold her position from this run, from her first run.
McKenna has just 700s on her teammate, Carolyn Maxwell, up next.
Nice run. I think a low 4 start for her is actually pretty good. I think she can be more or less happy with that. I know all the girls are going to be looking to be breaking into that sub 3.4 tenths of a second into the 30 highs, 30 mids for the start time, but that's Mackie's reeling it in a little bit, only 200ths.
How's the competitive atmosphere on your team now that you're fielding the full field of athletes? Oftentimes with the Germans, the bigger competition is within a team.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that people don't realize about the sport of luge is the biggest rivalry isn't really between any countries. It is mostly within the German team, with them trading off who's winning races, who's doing the best. That seems to have settled down a bit over the last little while, but as far as our team goes, it's a really good atmosphere. There's no animosity. All these girls really support each other quite well.
How Canadian of you guys.
Absolutely.
McKenna has a tough second heat here. She drops 2 places now into 3rd position behind your current leader, Candia Apriode. Natalie Mag of Switzerland in 2nd place. Candia's been in that winner's box for some time.
Climbing the ladder, as we like to say. As you, if you pick up lots of spots on the second run, that's what we call it in luge. You're climbing the position ladder.
On the handles, Carolyn Maxwell of Canada.
Carolyn's been really impressive with her start. 3 paddles, but 3 solid paddles. Steve, she's under 40 again. Yeah, 36 from the start, so that's quite good for her.
Similar to her first start time.
Yeah, only 200ths off the start record, so that's pretty impressive for such a young athlete.
100s in front so far for 17.035. Get all these Canadian girls.
Carolyn is currently 14th overall, showing a lot of promise.
Little
rookie
rough
to the
through
World
the
Cup
bottom
Tour.
there.
Ooh.
Dropped into the
4
red.
thousandths of a second. Can she gain it back in the finish curve? Maxwell lays back. Oh, and she loses time. Another one down for Candia Apriode, who remains in the lead. Carolyn Maxwell drops just behind her by 300ths of a second into 2nd place.
She's got some family out there. Those are her parents, long-time luge supporters of Justin Smith before Carolyn herself joined the sport, the family friends of the Smith family. So they know what they're looking for out there.
Nice and early on to 16. It wasn't enough to maintain that lead, but still a great finish for the young Canadian.
Yeah, just a couple little mistakes down there. I don't know how much that little bit of a rough line cost her, or if it was just that Candia Apriode had a really good second run.
On the handles, our first German of the second heat, Cheyenne Rosenthal. Is the pre-steer necessary into 7 there? I've only seen a few athletes do that.
The camera angles aren't really showing that well what that pre-steer is, so you do want to get the sled turned. Obviously, the start ramp going into curve 7 there is not in line with the rest of the track, just from it being offset. The angles don't line up, so as you get to the bottom of the ramp, you want to turn the sled so you get into curve 7 the same way you would going from further up the track.
So you have to force it with that hard steer. Rosenthal is maintaining her lead as she hits the finish line by only 400ths of a second, finally overtaking Latvia's Candia Apriode.
That problem started a little bit before, but all of the aftermath from that little issue would have been after the finish line, so I really don't think that would have cost her that much time. But as we were saying, for the top of the track, it absolutely is important to get the sled lined up with curve 7. But unfortunately, the camera angles that we're seeing right here kind of show the in between where you're really seeing that sled change direction.
The nuances that we have you in the booth here to describe, because there are
Absolutely.
so many in a sport that comes down to 1,000th of a second.
And when you are going slow like that and you don't have enough speed to get you up on the corner, it's a lot more similar to driving a go-kart, driving a race car, where you're cutting apexes rather than actually pushing pressure, which is most of the drives in luge.
To the top of the track for Latvia's Elisa Sauca.
Great job there, Rosenthal.
It's a decent shot of the little pre-steer. Sauca makes her way into corner 7.
You know, you see some of the athletes here, especially going into curve 9 there, they're going to have their heads up a little bit more. And when you are going slow...
Is that because of that straightaway? Are they steering that straightaway?
Yeah, there is a bit of a trick to curve 9 that, in my opinion, it is more, especially when you're going slow, it's more advantageous to drive that line perfectly by looking where you're going than really pushing for position there.
Ooh, a big hit before the finish. Does it cost her? No. 0.02 of a second to work with. Sauca is your new leader over Germany's Cheyenne Rosenthal.
Almost lost that lead with that issue out of 16, but yeah, that push into curve 9 there, it's when you're going slow, the aerodynamics doesn't have nearly as much of an effect, so it could be more worth it to drive that with precision rather than push for that aerodynamics that doesn't necessarily have that same effect that it does when you're going over 130 kilometers an hour at the bottom of the track.
Sauca can do no worse than 11th today, which would be her best finish of this season so far.
The coach reactions.
Latvia, your new leader. 10 sleds remain in the the second heat of Women's World Cup Luge here in Whistler, BC.
Hi, Mom. That was my mother right there, ringing the cowbell, out supporting the good thing about the luge community is that it is a tight-knit community. Everyone supports everyone, so we don't even race today, but my parents are out here watching the team.
On to our top 10, Russia's Ekaterina Katnikova. That's something that I've always really admired about luge. It is truly a family atmosphere. A lot of it is from, you guys start at such a young age and you've all grown up in these programs together.
Well, absolutely. Carolyn Maxwell, our top Canadian slider right now, would not have even been exposed to the sport if it wasn't for Justin Smith, my doubles partner, being family friends with the Maxwells. So it is... it's stuff like that makes the community really, really tight.
One of my cultural luge questions, though, as Katnikova goes late into 16, manages it well, she's going to drop behind Sauca. How far? No, she gains it back, 0.02 of a second.
So she will definitely be thinking about those 2 hits after 16, because those 0.02 of a second would be the other way if it wasn't for that mistake out of 16.
Your new leader, Russia's Ekaterina Katnikova, who is having a stellar season this year, kicked it off with 2 fifth-place finishes, followed by an 8th place in Lake Placid Sprint. She can now do no worse than a 10th place finish here in Whistler. But I'm always curious, nature versus nurture. What makes luge athletes in general super chill?
That's a good question. I think
the track. Does the track force it?
I think the track forces it a little bit. I would argue that some of them aren't the most chill. maybe that's from more of an inside perspective. But
well, when you travel together for an intensive 6 months of the year and train together in the summer, I'm sure you witness all the nuances. Absolutely. As we go back to the top for Austria's Madeline Egle.
That's another one of those nuances of luge where you have to be chill on the sled going down the hill, but you also have to be able to transition from the hugely explosive, hugely athletic motion of pulling a start to calm and collected in the sled. I'm sure it's somewhat close to a biathlon athlete going from
right. You got to slow that heart rate
working
down.
hard and a pounding heart to being able to lay down and breathe and put some accurate shots down
The biggest
range.
wave we've seen in curve 11. The question is this going to affect her farther down the track? Egla is already in the red, falling behind Russia's Ekaterina Kandakova late in the 16.
Yeah, you can always see and a big hit out that will cost her some time for
Tough
sure.
run for the Austrian, who was about to have her best finish of the season so far.
That late line into 16, you know that when a sled comes in on sliders right, our left on the side of the screen, that you get all of the G's all at once, and when the camera switches, they are going to be up close to the board. So switch and almost at the roof there, and really stretched out. You can see that's what we call losing your head.
And those are the natural pressures of 16 for everyone to see. That is what the corner wants to do, and that's how much steering capability you have on a luge sled when you see everyone flattening that out.
But really good to see that fight. That's a good explanation, or a good place to point out that if she hadn't driven the sled there on 16, she would have definitely made contact with the boards there, and could have been a worse outcome. But you need to keep those feet up. You need to keep fighting, especially in 16.
Tough break for the young Austrian as we go to the top of the track for Russia's Victoria Demchenko.
Good start and right into trouble.
38, good start for Victoria. Under that 3.4 mark on the start, so I think she'll be happy with that start time.
Demchenko is having a great season so far. She took home a bronze medal in the Lake Placid race.
A little late into curve 10 there. It looked like she handled it really well. I don't know if it's going to cost her that much time, and it's really not reflecting in the splits. 1200s
to work with. Demchenko makes her way down into the Gold Rush Trail.
Nice and early to 16. One of the hardest things to do is get that early to 16. Our coach likes to say that if we end up late into 16 over and over and over again, to try to bump early like that. So
your new leader by 0.2 of a second, Victoria Demchenko. She looked almost too early. Do you have to hold the sled up in order to maintain that height there?
A bump early entrance can actually have a similar effect to a late entrance. It actually pushes you away, and the outcome is ultimately the same. You end up getting more of the curve all at once, but really it's so wide open down there. I don't think that little bump on the entrance of 16 kind of gave her too much direction.
Demchenko with a lot of time to work with ahead of the pace, but she is looking in front to the 7 remaining athletes.
Always a bit of a firecracker in the leader's box.
To the top of the track for USA's Emily Sweeney.
Emily Sweeney, first run, noticed that she left the start handles with less than 5 seconds to go. I don't know if she had a visor problem, or looks like it's. I haven't been paying that close attention, but she might just be a habitual clock burner.
Come on, Sweeney.
Again, it feels like we're burning that clock. She has just 10 seconds to leave the handles now.
This gives me anxiety.
And she makes it with 3 seconds to spare.
Seconds
Emily
to go.
Sweeney in the track, pushing the limits. 3.39 start for Sweeney. That's 100 or 3,000ths of a second faster than her first start.
Hey, even Sweeney, you can see with that bit of a head up there, she's known for her really good position, but I think a lot of the athletes now are opting for that quicker, more precision in the driving than pushing for position in the slower section of the track there.
Losing the lead to Demchenko. She's now in the red after the Gold Rush Trail into the finish curve. Emily Sweeney, 500ths back. Great speed.
That's not going to help.
Oh, 1/10 of a second. That's a 4th place run for the second heat. That drops her in a 2nd position.
Stayed
Victoria
very
Demchenko
very calm with that little brush in
maintains
the
the
wall
lead.
out of 16, which definitely helped her from falling back even further. But
it's a testament to her 17 years of sliding experience. Sweeney is currently 4th overall.
But even with a perfectly clean exit of 16, I don't know if it would have been that 1100s to catch Victoria.
Well, even though the booth was filled with anxiety over her start delay, Sweeney showed no signs of it, but she did drop behind by over 1/10 of a second. There are still 6 sleds remaining. There's a chance to jump.
Yeah, I thought it was better. It was a little more skiddy than normal.
Listening in on the
The
conversation
camera
with
coaching.
the coach.
Yeah. That's a great spot to put a camera right next to the coach at the finish.
Yeah, so
Get
I'm sure at some point that microphone being on might get some athletes in trouble.
Maybe we'll move it for the men's race. On the top of the hill, the Katerina Baturina of Russia.
Might be better just for video and no audio at that point. Here you go, you know, look here, see, yeah, little peak going into 9 and then push the head back. So definitely more athletes opting for the higher precision in the line going into curve 9.
Baturina chasing down her teammate.
Really close run going on here. Looked like it was a bit of a sideways skid off of...
Oh, really high on the end of 14 there. Oh no, hitting to 15.
See, again, there we could see that with that little bit of feet down, a little bit of slower reaction to driving into 16, and how much she went into curve 16, kind of right wall late, same as Madeline Igle, but she was much higher, almost touching the boards there, and that was from that fraction of a second of having the feet down to be getting the feet up and driving the sled right away.
Baturina with a tough second run there, having to walk the rest of the way up the finish.
And that could be as easy as saying I was too safe on the first run. We're going to push it, slam the angle, and dish it out a little bit. And obviously here some grip issues, it looks like, because that sled was not tracking very well at all.
So that's something that she could have steered and fixed in 14 there?
With a harder drive right away, you can see the feet were on the ice, and if you keep your feet up there and kind of hammer on the drive right on the entrance of 16, that saves you from going so high.
5 sleds remain here in the second heat of the Women's World Cup in Whistler, BC. Victoria Demchenko is your current leader, and we are back to the top of the hill for Jessica Thiebel of Germany.
Very technically sound start. It looked like she was all in control, very technically well executed, but as our coach would say, looks like it might be missing a little bit of oomph. And as Wolfgang Staudinger would say, that's all guns. That's getting in the gym and grinding out over the summer.
I mean, that's expecting an explosion out of your arms that you would expect out of a sprinter's leg, that pop.
Absolutely, yeah. The frequency of the paddles, a quick turnover, a quick, there's lots of tricep push out from under your hips out the back.
Thiebel losing time to Demchenko. She's going to fall behind. How far? Second place for the young German.
And now it is the Russians' turn to climb the ladder. Definitely, she's gonna be happy to stay in that leader's box as long as possible. Only a couple more sleds to go to put her on the podium, in fact.
Question is, how good was that second run of Victoria Demchenko? We have 4 sleds remaining in the second heat as we begin the fight for the podium.
Yeah, look at Victoria Demchenko with that bib number 4. That is that on the first run, as the track deteriorates, 24 is pretty far close to the back of the pack. So getting to go before her competitors this run could play into her getting a bit faster second run.
Demchenko looks on as Julia Taubitz, your current overall leader from Germany, takes the handles. dropping in with a 3.40 start.
Again, a very technically sound start. That's always something you're going to expect from the German team. They work a lot on going through the motions of the start. So even though sometimes the strength and power might not be where exactly they want it to be, they still look very technically sound.
And that's something that's tough to express and explain, is just how technical it is for pedaling at the start and figuring out how to max out your physical capability.
Very clean looking run though. One of the things we noticed, dropped off of curve 11 a little bit early.
Oh,
1/100th of a second back.
100th of a second, drops behind Victoria Demchenko. Yulia Taubit's your World Cup leader, currently in second place.
Victoria only needs to take down one other athlete to get herself onto the podium. But something I really like to see from Julia here, that drop out of, she was a little bit early out of 11, a little bit more middle, I'm sure, than she would have liked to be in curve 12, but didn't push the sled over into curve 12. It's better to just take that little bit later of an entrance and work a little harder on curve 12 than have your feet pointing up curve 12 and just kind of having your angles not really where you want them to be.
And Tristan, you said with the starts lower on Whistler here, it's just about minimal effective dose, putting those steers just where they need to be, just light enough to get the job done and put yourself online. On the handles, the fight for the podium, Italy's Andrea Vetter. Vetter has had 4 fourth-place finishes in the last 2 seasons, no podiums.
I am sure that was weighing on her mind right now, and almost was over before it even started.
Makes it through. How is that going to fare for her velocity?
I think I missed the start time.
It was 3.39, so just 200ths back.
So not terrible. It didn't look like there was any major skid, and actually being close to that left wall and cutting the apex close into curve 7 there is good. It was just right on the line from being a disaster.
Vetter is still in the green.
Losing
and
time.
She falls back 133.3 kilometers an hour.
It's going to be hard for her to make that momentum up coming uphill, I'm sure.
9th place run, that looks like.
And happy to be back on the podium.
Velocity issues from the start. That's a 4th place for Andrea Vetter with 2 sleds remaining. I'm Bree Schaff, joined by Tristan Walker of the Canadian team. This has been an exciting second heat with Demchenko climbing, at least 6 spots there?
Absolutely, yeah. It's always exciting to see an athlete come from behind and make it to the podium. We'll see this start again here. What happened? That 4th paddle was a little hesitant. You can see it broke at her hips. There was no after press, so no press from the hips back, and that can really just unsettle the sled. It's not, and you can see from that little bit of a tentative 4th paddle, it twitched the sled a little bit, which was amplified by the laydown, which was really close to being a big disaster, but managed to hold on pretty well.
Demchenko is now in the medals, and you're right, considering
some of the other start disasters we have seen this race.
Right. Currently in 2nd place, Germany's Anna Bereiter. It's a pretty incredible position for the young German to be in, having had to qualify via the Nations Cup.
The difference there was a really confident, really powerful 4th paddle. We saw Brooke correct a mistake, a little slip on her 3rd paddle with that, and if you can put down that 4th paddle and produce velocity, you can straighten the sled out, and that's one of the big differences there. That if you just kind of touch the ice and go through the motions of a 4th paddle, it can be really not worth doing compared to just quitting it or quitting after 3 and getting it earlier.
Hanging on to her lead, looking toward her best career finish, through and down, 300ths ahead of the pace. That was a 4th place second run, but good enough to take the lead from Victoria Demchenko. Bereiter can now do no worse than a silver, her best result ever in the World Cup. Previous best result was Innsbruck, 7th place. soak it in.
Now the question, will it be 2 Germans on the podium or 2 Russians on the podium?
This is the battle of the power sliding nations. Really, really composed. That just shows how tight the German machine is for sliding sports. Just one sled remains. Russia's Tatiana Ivanova.
Luge drag, Luge drag. And ladies and gentlemen, for all the money, Russian slider
36 on the start. Powerful start from Ivanova, but that is absolutely to be expected.
Looks a bit safe, but that's a smart play by the veteran slider who's been sliding for 20 years.
A little bit closer to the right side of the ramp.
She's only got 100 to work with.
That. Oh, and now
it's growing.
Yeah, I'm sure she would have been like to be a little bit closer to the left side of the ramp than she was, but again, it's wide open up there if you can be a little bit more
Expanding
patient.
that lead, your winner of the women's race, Russia's Tatiana Ivanova by a large margin, 19/100ths of a second. Ivanova came out flawless. Great first heat, great second heat. That's what comes with experience, is knowing that you don't have to do anything extraordinary. You just have to be you.
Absolutely,
have a clean
yeah.
run.
The mental performance game definitely comes into play when you're sitting that long wait in between runs when you're in the lead. So it's a long time to think about it, but obviously didn't affect her that much. A little bit of a problem on the start ramp, but not really an issue for her.
There's worldwide tension as everyone watches the current WADA situation, but that does not seem to be affecting these Russian athletes as they continue to do what they do, which is dominate the sport of luge. We have an alternating podium here. Russia, Germany, Russia, Germany, Germany. And this was by far a much more exciting race than we'd anticipated in our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prior.
There was some mistakes that were made that I wasn't really expecting with the conditions right now.
Your final results: Tatiana Ivanova takes the win. Anna Bereiter with her first ever medal in a World Cup race. Victoria Demchenko climbs up into 3rd positions for the bronze medal. Yulia Taubitz, your World Cup leader, slides into 4th place, and Jessica Thiebel of Germany in 5th, with Andrea Vetter changing up the nations there from Italy in 6th place. Top Canadian finish was 12th place with Carolyn Maxwell there, your teammate. And then a tough day for the Americans. Ashley Farquharson and Brittany Arndt down there in 18th and 19th position, with Trinity Ellis, who had high hopes for her home track, finishes in 20, at least with a top 20. And then, of course, Summer Britcher, who came here for a podium and had a very unfortunate first heat. There's your flowers ceremony, your podium finishers. Tristan, final thoughts?
I think that again, yeah, was more exciting than we expected it to be, based off of conditions and the way the track is set up right now. The track crew's done such an amazing job making a nice, smooth track right now, and I'm really looking forward to getting on tomorrow.
And here's your overall World Cup standings. Yulia Taubitz remains in the lead with 330 points, but crouching in is Tatiana Ivanova of Russia. Summer Britcher maintains her top ranking with a 3rd place overall, 243 points, followed by Victoria Demchenko, who climbed up with a great finish today and 222 points. Emily Sweeney still in the top 6 there with 5th place. I'm Bree Schaff. Thank you so much to Tristan Walker, Olympic silver medalist, for joining me today. This is our first race